Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. MC-Mura here, and in today's video I wanted to talk about the 5 characters to look out for. Now I just want to put a disclaimer, this is not a tiers list video, this is not me saying these characters are top 5 or are the top 5. But I do want to say that these characters are very strong now, they have a real chance of being there. I think most of the previous season high tiers or top tiers are still pretty strong. Cess is still pretty nice. I do think Urien is probably the best out of the last season top tiers. Akuma is a little bit weaker, Poison is a little bit weaker, G is a little bit weaker, probably got hit maybe a little bit, and Guile I do think is actually still really solid. So most of them are still pretty good, I don't think you should drop these characters if you played any of them. And I want to start with Zeku, because Zeku I do actually believe belonged to the previous company. I do think Zeku was a sleeper top tier. I actually made a video last year, a tiers list video that I never published, and Zeku was actually in one of my, he was one of the highest, in the highest tier pretty much. I do think Zeku is top tier actually. And one of the reasons that Zeku is super strong is that he actually didn't get anything that is really big in terms of nerfs. He got a slight stun reduction, so maybe a combo like that is doing a little bit less stun, but as you can see the stun is still gigantic. The Hosanto is doing a little bit less stun, but that's fine. He's still doing a ton of damage and stun anyways. And of course I do think the wall nerf is probably gonna affect young Zeku a little bit. I do think this could affect him because Zeku is one of the characters that was kinda using the wall a little bit, so this is a slight nerf. But if you play young Zeku, and if you play Zeku at all, the buff to the EX run making this a combo is insane, because this is one of young Zeku's best pokes. This is a very big deal. It is one of his best normals. If you notice, most of his range is kinda short, he's a counter poke with punish character, but the light kick is one of his furthest reaching normal, and being able to get a knockdown out of that is really big. The second thing is V-shift. V-shift may not matter that much to many characters, but the main weakness for young Zeku was the weak defense. Young Zeku didn't have a reversal, you had to rely on your wake up game. Because he does have a little bit of an ambiguous wake up animation, but now he actually have options. Previously, if say Bison was doing something like, say for example Bison was doing something like this, right? Previously young Zeku would have to use his V-trigger 2, which was like an answer to moves like these and you would get good damage, but now he actually have other answers. Now you can V-shift that. Mid-screen he still is not getting that big of a punish unless he have super. If he is in the corner, which is of course the worst situation he can be in, he can of course get big combos out of that. And honestly, even mid-screen, like even if we repeated the same situation mid-screen, let's put this again, using young Zeku and being able to escape from this is actually a really big deal, and he only spent half of his V gauge. Young Zeku was a defensive option, is a very dangerous character, and you have to keep that in mind. So for that reason, and most of the characters better than Zeku actually getting nerfed, I do think that this will likely put Zeku in a really good place. And now for the second character, and the one that I'm kinda most confident in being very strong, that character is of course Cammy. And Cammy is again, just like Zeku, a character that was already very strong as it is, and Cammy got even better. Most of the characters around her got worse, they gave her some new buffs, and most of the universal changes actually plays to her favor. One of the biggest change Capcom done is they made many of the heavy attacks easier to whiff punish, right? So a character that already excelled at that is now gonna do it a little bit better. Look at how far I'm able to punish a character like Balrog now for whiffing a heavy, right? Cammy was already very strong at this, and now she's even better. She doesn't whiff that much on her own, and none of her heavy normals got the nerf, so her crouching heavy punch is still gonna be as hard as it was to whiff punish, standing heavy kick, and all of her heavies are pretty much intact. So she didn't get nerfed at all. She is now gonna jump. People will not be able to jab anti-air her, so that's even in her favor. She already probably was the best character in the game defensively because she had a 3 frame, she had a really annoying V reversal, and she have an EXDB. Now she also have V shift. And just like the other change, this one I do actually think also benefits Cammy, because Cammy have the fastest super in the game potentially, so her V shift will allow her to punish most of the stuff, right? So for example, if I'm trying to punish a dash low like that, right, this is extremely quickly. This is quicker than most characters in the game. Now with V shift and with her having her CA full, Cammy is gonna checkmate you, right? She will be able to checkmate most characters in many scenarios just because of the startup of her super and being super quick. And finally, one last really cool buff is that now she gets to do this. The idea is previously Cammy players had to do crouching medium kick and on block either stop, or on hit they would have to cancel into the uppercut, so that was kinda unfortunate. But now you don't even have to confirm, you can just do crouching medium kick into EX spiral arrow. If it happened to hit, you continue the combo, and if it got blocked, let's see if he blocks it once. Let's have him block at all. And if it got blocked, you are still in a range to kinda harass your opponent. You're not in throw range, but you get to still walk into throw or just harass them up close, right? So overall, character got buffed in many ways. The mechanics plays to her favor, and everyone around her got nerfed. It's very hard. I will be very surprised if Cammy didn't end up being top 5. I do think top 3 is likely, and top 1 isn't out of the contention. And the next one is this gentleman over there, and that is Balrog. Balrog got a really weird and confusing buff that I just frankly don't understand. What Capcom did is they made all of his dash punches -4. This is a very big deal because the entire build of Balrog was that he was a charge character, right? He had to be crouching and he had to charge his dash punch, and when he does his dash punch, if it wasn't properly spaced, he would get punished, right? This is the entire design behind Balrog. But now, because he can just do his dash punches and he doesn't really have to worry about safety anymore. I mean, -4 is still punchable, but previously you had to be precise with your spacing. Now, unless you are doing it from horrendous spacings, you will still be safe pretty much. Like I showed in the previous video, he also have one of the best V-trigger activations. And again, V-shift is something that plays completely into Balrog's hand, because he's one of the characters who actually struggled defensively. Balrog only had a 3 frame and it doesn't lead to much, and he also didn't have much in the way of invincible anti-airs. So for example, attacks like Cammy's dive kick was hard for him to deal with. Now he can V-shift and punish. His V-shift opens a lot of punishes that he wasn't previously able to, right? And he even buffed the damage on his command grab in V-Trigger 2, which is again another puzzling change, but probably because it usually leads to stun, and they want him to do stun combos. So now that's doing even more damage. And you have to consider that most of the grapplers, which were typically his bad matchups, got nerfed as well, or the V-shift kinda hurt them. So the bad matchups for him are kinda weaker. He have a new defensive options that will help him against these bad matchups. Most of the stronger character got nerfed, and he actually got mad buffs that will allow him to harass his opponent with much less care and much less precision. So overall, I do think he could be in a very good place. Overall, I do think he's actually probably gonna be either a really strong character or a super annoying character that is almost there. And now for the final 2 characters, and you are looking at them, these 2 ladies right here. And I know this might surprise many people. I know that a lot of you might have expected Ryu, Ed, Alex, maybe Honda, maybe Cody, but I do think these 2 characters are in better shape at the moment. I will put most of these guys as honorable mentions, but I do think that Ryu, while he is a lot better, and while I do think his V-Trigger 2 is actually really cheap at the moment, I still think that Ryu fundamentally still have most of his same issues, the lack of range and all of that, and his neutral is pretty strong, but characters that will bypass fireballs easily will still give him a lot of issues. Ed is in a much better shape, but again, he still kinda have some wonky combos, especially with crouching medium punch to psycho upper. I've seen it with multiple times still. But overall, he's in a better shape, of course. Alex, again, he's doing a little bit better. His Oki is a little bit better. But Alex is pretty much, he's still Alex. He still kinda has the same defensive issues. V-Shift is helping him a little bit, but it's also hurting him a little bit, so you have to consider that. And of course, Honda is doing way more of what he was already good at, but again, he still has the same issues, and the same applies to Cody. Falk, on the other hand, I think is a character that got adjusted in ways that actively could help her in the long run. The first thing that I want to talk about is her V-Shift and critical art, and this is something you kinda have to consider. Her critical art is a 4-frame super, so from a range like that, Falk can punish -4. This means that she is gonna be one of the best characters in the game at V-shifting something and then punishing with critical art. And Falk in general is a defensive character. She is quite conservative with her meter use. She doesn't have anything in the neutral to throw out, like she doesn't have an EXP move to throw out, so she's gonna have super often, because her super is gonna be either this or YOLO DB. It's not gonna be anything else, right? And because of that, I do think she will have super a lot, and V-shift to critical art is gonna be a thing with this character. I honestly think it's gonna be a big part of the Falk meta. The second thing is neutral jumping and the air fireball in general. Falk just neutral jumping in your face like that is actually obnoxious now. The recovery on the landing recovery on the fireball is really short at the moment. It is a little bit low commitment. And of course, if say the opponent happened to jump, her jumping heavy kick puts them in a juggle state. And this is 7 frames, so it is actually pretty fast for an air to air, right? And of course can lead to damage as well, so that is really nice. So her just neutral jumping and anti-airing with heavy kick, or just doing fireball, or just being annoying and neutral jumping, it's actually really good. Of course I don't need to tell you that this poke is really stupid at the moment. It is insanely good. Her footsies in general are a lot better because of this. This being the standing medium kick being more hit confirmable. And standing heavy punch was always really good. She now have a better options against anti-airs. She's now getting a little bit more out of that, because when the opponent jumps and she anti-airs, she get to check now. So that is really powerful. Obviously she always had some really cool corner pressure with the storm. So in the corner you could have always do the EX catapult into the dive stuff. Right, that stuff was always there and always tricky. And finally, you have to consider that she also now have a really stupid V-trigger 1. Falk jumping in and doing a normal, or jumping in and doing the fireball, this is actually going to be super obnoxious to deal with. If you check this out, this was plus 26 on hit, right? So she could either jump forward and attack, jump and drop, or jump and fireball. And if she happened to fireball, she's actually so plus, she gets to walk and continue her combos, do whatever she wants pretty much, right? It's super plus and she can follow up easily. So her jumping game in V-Trigger is gonna be pretty degenerate, I do think. Or there is at least a big room for degeneracy. And finally, of course, she's a pretty defensive character, getting one of the best punishes out of V-Shift. I can't see where she can go wrong here. Her only weakness is of course still the lack of offense, but again, many of the characters who were super hyper aggressive got kinda nerfed, so I do think it will be good for her in the long run. Not really sure, she's kind of my wild card out of this top 5, but I do think she's the character who has the most potential, at least in my eyes. The other one of course is Minette, and I think Minette is fairly obvious. Most of the characters of her archetype, say Poison, Dulcim, Guile, most of the zoners got nerfed. She got tiny buffs, especially the anti-air. This actually is not a tiny buff, this is a good buff for Minette, and it is helpful. Of course, due to the nature of her V-trigger, it is a mix-up set play heavy V-trigger, but because of its nature and how much control she have, she probably will be able to fight against V-shift more or better than most other characters in the game. Her herself even having a V-shift is super helpful, because Minette always had a 3 frame and a really bad V-reversal, but now she have more options. I think you can kinda easily see why Minette will be really good. And actually, just like Falk, Minette also is gonna be or will have one of the best V shift to critical art. Her super is actually really fast as well. And that is pretty much it for today's video. If you have enjoyed this video, please leave a like or a comment. It helps the channel so much. Remember that this is all just pure speculation. It's way too early to talk about a tiers list, but these are the characters that I do feel optimistic for or think could end up being in a very good place. Again, thank you very much for watching and stay safe.